"You are too poor to wear my designs." Adaeze laughed those words at a teacher begging for a wedding dress. 90 days later, Adaeze was begging that same bride for a job. What happened in between destroyed everything she thought made her valuable. The needle caught the light as it pierced the silk, each stitch a small act of perfection. Adaeze Okafor had always believed that perfection was what separated her from the ordinary people of Lagos. Her atelier on Admiralty Way in Lekki wasn't just a shop, it was a temple, and she was its high priestess, deciding who was worthy of beauty and who would remain in the shadows of their own inadequacy. The morning sun filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating bolts of Italian silk and French lace stacked like promises along the walls. The air smelt of expensive fabric and even more expensive perfume. Everything in Adaze's world had a price, and that price was always just beyond what most people could afford. That's exactly how she wanted it. "Madam, there is someone here to see you," her assistant Gloria said from the doorway. Gloria had learned to speak softly in Adaze's presence, like a person approaching a sleeping leopard. Adaeze didn't look up from the beadwork she was inspecting. "Who?" "She says her name is Nkechi. She wants to discuss a wedding dress." "Does she have an appointment?" "No, ma." "Then she can make one and come back." Adaze's voice was casual, dismissive, the tone of someone who had said these words so many times they had become automatic. "She says she's been trying to make an appointment for 3 weeks, ma. She said this is her only free day." Adaeze finally looked up, irritation flickering across her perfectly made-up face. She was 35 years old, but looked younger, the kind of ageless beauty that comes from expensive skincare and a life unmarked by genuine hardship. Her natural hair was styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders, each one precisely maintained. Her wrapper and blouse were custom-made Ankara in deep purple and gold, fabric that announced wealth before she even spoke. "Fine," she said, setting down her work with exaggerated patience. "Send her in, but Gloria, make it clear that consultations are by appointment only. I'm making an exception." Gloria disappeared, and a moment later, a young woman entered the atelier. Nkechi Ude was 27 years old and looked exactly like what she was, a primary school teacher who had saved for months to afford even this conversation. Her shoes were clean but worn, her dress was neat but clearly not designer. Her hair was braided simply, without the expensive attachments that Lagos women wore like crowns. She carried a small purse that she clutched with both hands, and her eyes were bright with hope and nervousness. She was, in other words, everything that Adaeze had trained herself to look past. "Good morning, ma," Nkechi said, and her voice was soft, respectful, the voice of someone who had been taught that politeness was free even when everything else cost too much. Adaeze gestured to the chair across from her work table, but didn't stand, didn't smile, didn't offer the warmth that she reserved for clients whose bank accounts matched her prices. "You wanted to discuss a wedding dress," Adaeze said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma." Nkechi sat down carefully, as if the chair would charge her extra. "I'm getting married in 3 months, and I heard that you are the best designer in Lagos. I've seen your work on Instagram, and it's so beautiful. I've been dreaming about having one of your dresses for my wedding." Adaeze studied her with the practiced eye of someone who could calculate a person's worth in seconds. Her worn shoes, her simple dress, the way her hands trembled slightly as she opened her purse. "My dresses start at 500,000 naira, flatly. For something simple, custom work for a wedding would be at least 800,000, possibly more depending on the design and materials." She watched Nkechi's face carefully, saw the hope flicker and dim like a candle catching a sudden draft. I have been saving," Nkechi said quietly. She pulled out an envelope from her purse, the kind of envelope that working people use to keep their money safe. "I have 150,000 naira, ma. I know it's not your usual price, but I thought maybe you could make something simple. I don't need beads or lace, just something beautiful, something that makes me feel special on my wedding day." The silence that followed was thick with calculation. Adaeze could have said yes. She could have seen this young woman's hope and chosen kindness. She could have remembered what it felt like to want something desperately and to work hard for it. She could have made a simple dress that would have meant the world to Nkechi and cost Adaeze almost nothing in time or materials. But Adaeze had built her empire on exclusivity, and exclusivity required walls, high walls, walls that kept out people who couldn't afford to scale them. 150,000 naira, Adaeze repeated, and she let contempt color her voice like dye bleeding into white fabric. It's insulting. Adaeze stood up and her voice rose with her, filling the atelier. Gloria, working at a sewing machine across the room, looked up nervously. 2 other seamstresses stopped their work. Adaeze knew this was entertainment, and part of her was performing to them, establishing dominance, making sure everyone understood the hierarchy. I love teaching, Nkechi said, and there was something in her voice now, not anger, but dignity, a quiet strength that Adaeze mistook for weakness. And I chose this work because it pays, Adaeze shot back. That's the difference between us. You settle for meaning, I demand value. And the value of my time, my skill, my reputation is far beyond what you can afford. She walked to the door and opened it, a clear dismissal. There are shops in Balogo Market that will sew you something for 150,000. Go there, find someone whose standards match your budget, but don't come to my atelier and insult me with your poverty. The word hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Nkechi stood slowly. She looked at Adaeze for a long moment, and in her eyes was something Adaeze would not recognize until much later. Pity. Not for herself, but for Adaeze. Pity for a person so trapped in their own pride that they couldn't see the prison they'd built. I'm sorry, Ma, Nkechi said quietly. For wasting my time, you should be. No, Ma, Nkechi's voice was gentle, almost tender. I'm sorry that you measure people by their money. I'm sorry that you can't see value in anything else. I'm sorry for you. And then she left, clutching her envelope of savings, her dreams of a perfect wedding dress dissolving with each step. Adaeze closed the door and turned to her staff. Let that be a lesson, she said. We have standards here. Maintain them. Gloria and the other seamstresses nodded, but something in Gloria's eyes looked troubled. Adaeze ignored it. She returned to her work table, to her beadwork, to her world of silk and superiority. She forgot about Nkechi by the time she locked up that evening. But forgetting, as the elders know, is not the same as erasing. Some things have a way of coming back, like threads you thought you'd cut, but only left hanging, waiting to unravel. 2 weeks after Nkechi's visit, a man walked into Adaze's atelier. He was tall, well-dressed in an expensive suit that spoke of corporate success and international taste. His shoes were Italian, his watch was Swiss, his smile was American, bright, confident, practiced. Adaeze Okafor, he said, extending his hand, I've heard so much about your incredible work. Adaeze shook his hand, already calculating. Rich client, possible celebrity connection, opportunity. I'm Chidi Okoro. I run an investment firm and I'm looking to expand into the fashion industry. I've been studying the Lagos fashion scene and your name keeps coming up. You're the designer everyone mentions. Adaeze felt pride bloom in her chest like expensive flowers opening. I try to maintain a certain standard, she said modestly, though her eyes were already imagining the possibilities. Investment, expansion, international recognition. I can see that. Chidi looked around the atelier with apparent appreciation. This space is beautiful, but imagine what you could do with 3 locations, Lekki, Victoria Island, and Abuja. Imagine runway shows, international fabric suppliers, a real empire. That's always been my dream, Adaeze admitted, and for once her voice was genuine, unguarded. Dreams need capital, Chidi said, and I have capital looking for the right opportunity. I'd like to propose a partnership. I invest in your expansion, you provide the creative vision. We split profits 60-40 after expenses. 60-40 in whose favor? Adaeze asked. Of course, yours. You're the talent. I'm just the money. Just the money. 3 words that should have raised alarms in any business person's mind, but Adaeze heard what she wanted to hear. Recognition, validation, the promise of becoming everything she'd always believed she deserved. Over the next month, Chidi returned frequently. He got contracts that Adaeze barely read, blinded by ambition and the elegant legal language that made everything sound legitimate. He brought architects' drawings for the new locations. He brought projections showing profits that would quadruple her current income. I just need initial capital from you, Chidi explained. 2 million naira to show good faith. It's standard in investment partnerships. I'll match it 10-1, 20 million for expansion. 2 million naira? Adaeze hesitated. It was most of her savings. Adaeze, Chidi leaned forward, his expression earnest. I'm offering you the opportunity of a lifetime. But if you're not serious, I can find another designer. There are plenty who would kill for this chance. Pride, that old friend, that faithful enemy. I'm serious, Adaeze said. I'll have the money by Friday. She didn't consult a lawyer, didn't ask her bank for advice, didn't tell her family. She simply withdrew 2 million naira and handed it to Chidi with the trust of someone who had never been betrayed, because she'd never been vulnerable enough to betray. Chidi promised the matching funds would be transferred within 2 weeks. The contracts were signed, the future was bright. And then, Chidi disappeared. At first, Adaeze told herself there was a reasonable explanation. Business travel, banking delays, administrative complications. She called his number. It was disconnected. She went to the address on his business card. The building existed, but no investment firm by that name had ever been there. She searched online. Chidi Okoro's social media profiles had vanished like smoke.
The truth arrived slowly, then all at once, like water seeping through fabric, until suddenly everything is soaked. She had been scammed. Completely, professionally, thoroughly. 2 million naira gone. But money, terrible as its loss was only the beginning. Adaeze had been so confident about the expansion that she'd stopped accepting small commissions, turning away clients whose dresses wouldn't be worthy of her new direction. She told her landlord she'd be leaving for a bigger space, and he'd promptly rented her atelier to someone else, giving her 30 days to vacate. She'd bragged to her competitors about her upcoming expansion, and now those same competitors were whispering, laughing, spreading the story of how Lagos's most exclusive designer had been played like a complete amateur. Her reputation, built on exclusivity and superiority, crumbled faster than sandcastles at high tide. Clients cancelled orders, not wanting to be associated with someone so publicly foolish. Her staff, sensing the sinking ship, found other positions. Even Gloria, loyal Gloria, gave her notice. "I'm sorry, Ma," she said, and she genuinely was, "but I have a family to feed. I can't stay somewhere with no income." Adaeze wanted to be angry, but anger required energy she no longer had. Within 60 days of handing Chidi that money, Adaze's atelier was closed. Her apartment, which she'd rented at premium prices to maintain her image, was beyond her budget now. Her car was repossessed when she missed 2 payments. Lagos, which had once felt like her kingdom, now felt like a trap. Everywhere she went, she saw the whispers, the pointed fingers, the schadenfreude of a city that loves watching the mighty fall. She moved into a single room in Yaba, the kind of place she would have mocked 6 months earlier. She sold her designer clothes, her jewelry, her expensive furniture. She ate gari and groundnuts when she ate at all. She applied to every fashion house in Lagos. None would hire her. Her name, which was once her greatest asset, was now toxic. Nobody wanted the designer who'd been scammed by the most obvious con artist in Nigerian history. 90 days after Nkechi had walked out of her atelier, Adaeze understood what it meant to have nothing. Not just no money, but no options, no dignity, no future that she could see. She sat in her small room one evening, staring at her hands, the same hands that had created masterpieces, that had stitched dreams into reality for women who could afford to dream. Now those hands shook with hunger and shame. Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer, tired of creditors and their demands. "Hello? Is this Adaeze Okafor, the designer?" The voice was female, young, professional. "Yes," Adaeze said carefully. "My name is Ada. I'm calling on behalf of my employer, who is starting a new fashion line and needs an experienced seamstress. Are you currently employed?" Seamstress, not designer, not creative director. Seamstress. A month ago, Adaeze would have been insulted. Today, she was desperate. "No, I'm available." "Wonderful. Can you come for an interview tomorrow, 10 a.m.? I'll send you the address." "Yes. Thank you, I'll be there. When the address came through, Adaeze recognized the area, Ikoyi. Expensive, elegant, a sign of the world she'd lost. She had one outfit left that didn't scream poverty. She wore it the next morning, along with the last scraps of her pride, and took a bus to Ikoyi, standing in the crowded vehicle among the same working people she'd once looked down on. The house was beautiful. Not a mansion, but substantial. A sign outside read, Nkechi no Wachoku Designs, clothing with purpose. Nkechi. The name struck Adaeze like a slap. It couldn't be. Lagos had thousands of Nkechis. It was just a coincidence. She rang the bell. A young woman, Ada presumably, answered and led her through a tastefully decorated home to a bright studio in the back. And there, standing at a design table, sketching, was Nkechi. The same Nkechi, the teacher, the poor girl with 150,000 naira. Except she didn't look poor now. She looked confident, happy, purposeful. She wore a simple but elegant dress. Her natural hair was styled beautifully. On her finger was a wedding ring that caught the light. She'd gotten married, without Adaze's dress, without Adaze's help. Nkechi looked up, and recognition flickered across her face. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Adaeze waited for it. The revenge, the mockery, the karmic justice that would let Nkechi humiliate her the way she'd been humiliated. Instead, Nkechi smiled, a real smile, warm, genuine. Adaeze, she said, please sit down. Adaeze sat, her body stiff with shame and expectation of pain. I'm sorry, Nkechi said first, and the apology was so unexpected that Adaeze flinched. Ada didn't tell you it was me, did she? I asked her not to use my full name in the call because I wasn't sure you'd come if you knew. Why would you want me to come? Adaze's voice came out harsh, defensive. After what I did to you? Because I need a seamstress, Nkechi said simply, and because I believe in second chances. She gestured around the studio. After that day at your atelier, I went home and cried for hours. Not because of the dress. I found someone wonderful in Balugo Market who made me something beautiful for 100,000 naira. But because of how you made me feel, like I was worthless, like my dreams were stupid because I couldn't afford expensive things. Adaeze looked at her hands, unable to meet Nkechi's eyes. But my husband, you remember I mentioned I was getting married. He's an architect, and he told me that night something that changed everything. He said, that woman's cruelty says nothing about your worth. It only reveals her poverty. Not financial poverty, poverty of spirit. The word struck deep, finding all the places where Adaeze was already wounded. He encouraged me to start my own line, Nkechi continued. Clothes for working women, teachers, nurses, civil servants. Beautiful, affordable, dignified. We launched 2 months ago, and we're already getting more orders than I can handle alone. That's why I need help. You want me to work for you, Adaeze said, and she couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. You want to rub it in, show me how far you've fallen. No, Nkechi's voice was firm. I want to offer you a job because you are talented. I've seen your work, Adaeze. You are one of the best seamstresses in Lagos. You just forgot that skill matters more than status. I can't, Adaze's voice broke. I can't work for you, not after you humiliated me, Nkechi finished gently. I've thought about that a lot, about whether I should hold on to that hurt, let it make me too cruel. But my grandmother used to say that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I don't want to be poisoned, and I don't think you want to stay lost. Tears were running down Adaze's face now, hot and shameful. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming. I lost everything, Adaeze whispered. Everything, and it's all my fault. Yes, Nkechi said, and her honesty was kinder than false comfort. But that doesn't mean you can't build something new, different, better. She pulled out a chair next to her design table and sat down, looking at Adaeze with eyes that held no malice, only a sadness that came from understanding pain too well. I'm not offering you this job out of pity, Nkechi said. I'm offering it because I need your skills, but I'm also offering it because I think we're supposed to teach each other something. You taught me that I don't need expensive designers to be beautiful. Maybe I can teach you that you don't need expensive clients to be valuable. What if I haven't changed? Adaeze asked. What if I'm still that person who... Then you'll be that person while sewing beautiful dresses for women who actually need them, Nkechi interrupted. And maybe one stitch at a time, you'll become someone different, someone better, someone who measures wealth by what she gives, not what she charges. The choice hung in the air between them. Adaeze could refuse, could walk away, could hold on to her pride like a life raft even as it dragged her deeper into the water. Or she could accept, could take the hand being offered, could let herself be saved by the person she tried to destroy. I don't deserve this, Adaeze said. Probably not, Nkechi agreed. But mercy isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to be different than the cruelty we've received. My grandmother also said that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. But she also said that people can grow, can change, can become new. I'm betting on the second part, are you? Adaeze looked at this woman, this teacher she dismissed as too poor, too ordinary, too unworthy of her time, and saw what she'd been too blind to see. Strength, dignity, grace, the kind of wealth that couldn't be bought or stolen or lost. Yes, Adaeze whispered, I want to try. Good, Nkechi said, and she smiled. Then let me show you what we're working on.
The first weeks were harder than Adaeze had imagined. Not because the work was difficult, she could sew in her sleep, but because every day she had to confront who she had been, who she might still be if she wasn't careful. Nkechi's clients were nothing like Adaeze's former clientele. They were teachers and nurses and civil servants, women who saved for months to afford one nice dress, women who treated each piece of clothing like treasure because for them it was. One afternoon, a customer came in to pick up a dress Adaeze had made. She was a nurse, maybe 50 years old, with tired eyes and gentle hands. When she tried on the dress, her whole face transformed. It's beautiful, she whispered, turning in the mirror. I've never had anything so beautiful. Adaeze felt something crack open in her chest. This woman was beautiful in the dress, not because the dress was expensive, but because the joy was real. Because the occasion, her daughter's graduation, mattered more than any society wedding Adaeze had ever dressed. Thank you, the woman said, taking Adaeze's hands. Thank you for making me feel special. After she left, Adaeze sat at her sewing machine, unable to work. Nkechi noticed and came to sit beside her. You okay? I don't know, Adaeze admitted. I never saw them before. All those years, I only saw their money or lack of it. I never saw them. And now I can't unsee them. Adaeze looked at Nkechi with eyes that were finally truly open. How do you do it? How do you care this much about people you barely know? Because they are not people I barely know. They're someone's mother, someone's sister, someone's wife. They are women who work hard, who sacrifice, who dream. Just like you, just like me. When you see them as human, not as transactions, everything changes. I wasted so many years, Adaeze said, and the regret was a physical weight. Then don't waste any more. Nkechi's voice was firm but kind. You can't change the past. You can only choose who you are today, right now, with the next customer, the next dress, the next chance to see people as people. Adaeze nodded, wiping her eyes. I want to be different. Then be different, one choice at a time.
6 months passed, then a year. Adaeze became Nkechi's lead seamstress, then her partner as the business grew. They opened a small training program teaching young women to sew, giving them skills that could change their lives. One day, a customer came into the shop. She was maybe 22, wearing clothes that screamed expensive and carrying herself with the kind of arrogance Adaeze recognized because she'd invented it. "I need a dress," the young woman announced, not asked, "for a gala, something that shows everyone I have taste." Adaeze felt the old instinct rise, to judge, to dismiss, to measure this girl's worth by her attitude. But she breathed through it, chose differently. "We'd be happy to help you," Adaeze said. "What's the occasion?" "My father's company is being honored. I need to look perfect, better than everyone else." Adaeze saw herself in this girl. The same pride, the same need to prove worth through appearance, the same emptiness dressed in expensive fabric. "I can definitely make you look beautiful. But can I ask you something? Why do you need to look better than everyone else?" The young woman blinked, surprised by the question. Because that's what matters. Looking successful, being envied. "Does it make you happy, the envy?" "What?" "Being envied. Does it make you happy, or does it just make you feel less empty for a moment?" The young woman stared at her, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, of a truth she'd been avoiding. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I used to think the same way. I used to think that if people envied me, it meant I was valuable. But envy isn't the same as respect, and neither of them is the same as peace." She pulled out some fabric samples. "Let's make you something beautiful. Not to be better than everyone else, but to honor the occasion and honor yourself. Real beauty doesn't need to diminish others to shine." The young woman looked at the fabrics, then at Adaeze. "You sound like a teacher." Adaeze smiled, glancing at Nkechi across the room. "I learned from the best." 2 years after Adaeze had walked into Nkechi's studio as a desperate job seeker, they sat together one evening after closing, reviewing orders and sipping tea. "I got a message today," Nkechi said, and something in her voice made Adaeze look up. "From the governor's wife. She saw our work at her niece's wedding and wants us to dress her for the state dinner next month." Adaeze's heart jumped. The governor's wife, the kind of client she once built her whole identity around. "Are we going to take it?" asked Adaeze. "I don't know," Nkechi said honestly. "It's a huge opportunity. The exposure could triple our business, but it could also change us, change what we stand for. I wanted to ask you, what do you think?" Adaeze was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the person she had been, the person she had become, the person she was still becoming. "I think," she said slowly, "that we should make her the most beautiful dress we can. Not because she's the governor's wife, not because of the exposure, but because every woman deserves to feel beautiful, whether she has 150,000 naira or 15 million naira." Nkechi smiled. "That's exactly what I was thinking." "But," Adaeze continued, "I think we should also donate the profit to the Teachers Fund, the one you started, because if we're going to dress the powerful, we should remember to empower the humble." Nkechi reached across the table and squeezed Adaeze's hand. "You know what my grandmother would say about you?" "What?" "That a diamond starts as coal. Pressure and time change it into something precious. You're a diamond now, Adaeze. You've done the work. You've become someone new." Adaeze felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm still working on it. Every day, I'm still working on it." "We all are," Nkechi said. "That's the secret nobody tells you. We're all just working on it one choice at a time, one stitch at a time, one moment of choosing better over easier. They sat together in comfortable silence, two women who had taught each other what the textbooks never could, that wealth without character is poverty in disguise, that mercy is stronger than cruelty, and that who we are is more important than what we own. Outside, Lagos continued its eternal dance, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the struggling, all moving through the same streets, breathing the same air, searching for the same things: dignity, purpose, love, worth. Adaeze looked around the studio she'd helped build, not the temple of exclusivity she once commanded, but something better, a place where women came not to prove their worth, but to claim it, where beauty wasn't reserved for those who could afford it, but celebrated in every woman who walked through the door. She thought about the young woman from earlier, the one who reminded her of her former self. She hoped the girl would come back, hoped she'd learn the lesson before she had to lose everything to find it. But if she didn't, if she insisted on learning the hard way, Adaeze would understand. Because some lessons can't be taught, they can only be survived.
3 years to the day after Nkechi had walked into Adaeze's former atelier with her envelope of savings and her simple dream, they stood together at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Nkechi and Adaeze fashioned with heart, the sign read above their new, larger location. A space that honored both of them. A partnership built not on money, but on mutual transformation. Journalists asked Adaeze about her fall from grace and remarkable comeback. It wasn't a comeback, she corrected gently. It was a completely different journey. I didn't return to where I was. I became someone new. Do you regret your past? One journalist asked. Adaeze thought about that. I regret the pain I caused. I regret the years I wasted seeing people as transactions instead of humans. But I don't regret the lesson because it taught me something I could never have learned any other way. What's that? She looked at Nkechi, standing beside her, the woman who had every right to seek revenge, but chose mercy instead. That the people we dismiss often become our greatest teachers. That wealth without character is poverty in disguise. That mercy is stronger than cruelty. And that who we are is more important than what we own. After the ceremony, after the guests had left and they were cleaning up, a woman approached hesitantly. She was older, maybe 60, wearing a simple dress and head wrap. "Excuse me," she said to Adaeze. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "My daughter worked in your old atelier, Gloria. You probably don't remember her." Adaeze froze. Gloria, her former assistant, the one who had left when everything fell apart. She told me about how things were there, how you treated people, how focused you were on money and status. The woman's voice was gentle, not accusatory. But she also told me about your transformation, about how you changed, about how you work now. "I'm sorry," Adaeze said, the words automatic but sincere, "for how I treated her, for how I treated everyone." "That's why I came," the woman said, "to tell you that Gloria sees what you've become and she's proud of you. We all are. Because it takes more courage to change than to stay the same, even when staying the same is destroying you." She pressed something into Adaze's hand and left before Adaeze could respond. It was a small wrapped package. Inside was a spool of thread, the expensive kind Adaeze used to use, the kind that cost more than necessary but produced the most beautiful stitches. And a note: "For your new work, you taught me about excellence.
Thank you for learning about Greece, Gloria. Adaeze clutched the thread and the note, and she cried. Not tears of shame this time, but tears of gratitude. Gratitude for the fall that taught her to rise differently. Gratitude for the woman who showed her mercy when she deserved judgment. Gratitude for the chance to become someone worth becoming. Nkechi found her there, sitting in the empty shop, holding the thread like a treasure. You okay? Better than okay, Adaeze said. I'm free. Free from what? From the prison I built for myself. From measuring worth in naira. From believing that exclusivity was the same as excellence. From thinking that looking down on others could somehow lift me up. Nkechi sat beside her on the floor, and they stayed there in the quiet. Two women who had found each other across a chasm of pride and hurt, and had built a bridge made of thread and mercy and the stubborn belief that people can change if given the chance. You know what the best part is? Adaeze said. What? I'm happier now than I ever was in that atelier. Happier with less money, less status, less of everything I thought mattered, because I have more of what actually does. Like what? Like this, Adaeze gestured around the shop, at the dresses waiting to be picked up by women whose names she knew, whose stories she'd heard, whose joy she genuinely cared about. Like work that means something, like friendship that's real, like knowing that when I go to sleep at night, I'm not just successful, I'm good, or at least I'm trying to be. Nkechi smiled. My grandmother would have loved you. The one with all the wisdom? Yes. She used to say that life gives us two educations. The first we pay for with money, sitting in classrooms, learning facts. The second we pay for with pain, walking through fire, learning truth. She said the second education is more expensive but infinitely more valuable. I paid full price for mine, Adaeze said with a rueful laugh. We all do, Nkechi replied. The only difference is whether we learn the lesson or repeat the class. Years passed, as years do, carrying both women forward into lives they never could have imagined when they first met across that atelier desk. Their business grew, but not in the way Adaze's first venture had grown, not through exclusivity and cruelty, but through excellence and care. They dressed governors' wives and street vendors with the same attention to detail, the same commitment to beauty, the same recognition that every woman deserved to feel valuable. They trained over 100 women in sewing and design, many of them going on to start their own businesses. They created a scholarship fund for children of working-class families, ensuring that the next generation wouldn't have to choose between dreams and survival. And Adaeze, who had once measured her worth by the zeros in her bank account, learned to measure it by the lives she touched, the women she empowered, the change she made possible simply by choosing every single day to be better than she had been. On the 5th anniversary of their partnership, a young woman walked into their shop. She was maybe 25, wearing an expensive dress, carrying herself with familiar arrogance. I need a dress, she announced, something that shows I have arrived. Adaeze looked at Nkechi. Nkechi looked back. They shared a smile that contained an entire history. We can definitely help you, Adaeze said, and her voice was warm, patient, kind. But first, let me tell you a story about a woman who thought arriving somewhere was the same as being someone. And as she spoke, as she gently guided this young woman towards understanding that true arrival has nothing to do with status and everything to do with character, Adaeze felt the circle complete. The student had become the teacher. The broken had become the healer. The lost had found not just herself, but a way to help others find themselves.
The elders teach us that a needle without thread is useless, but thread without a needle is also incomplete. They tell us that we need each other, the proud and the humble, the wealthy and the struggling, the teacher and the student,
to create the fabric of community. Adaeze learned what many never learn, that cruelty is expensive, costing us our humanity one choice at a time, while mercy is profitable beyond measure, returning to us in ways we cannot predict but desperately need. She discovered that the dresses we make are temporary, but the lives we touch are eternal. That exclusivity is just another word for loneliness, while inclusion is another word for love. That the people we dismiss in our arrogance often return as our salvation in our humility. For in this life, we are all both teachers and students, both broken and healing, both in need of mercy and capable of giving it. The question is not whether we will fall. We all fall. The question is whether we will let the fall break us or break us open. Whether we will use our pain to justify more cruelty or to cultivate more compassion. Adaeze chose compassion. Nkechi chose mercy. Together, they proved that the strongest thread is not made of silk or gold, but of forgiveness freely given and lessons humbly learned. May we all have the courage to change when change is necessary. May we all have the grace to forgive when forgiveness is possible. And may we remember that true wealth is not measured by what we own, but by who we become when we finally understand that every person we meet, rich or poor, powerful or struggling, is carrying a thread that connects to our own, and together we are weaving something larger than ourselves, the fabric of our shared humanity, stronger and more beautiful because of every mercy giving, every lesson learned, every person who chose to grow rather than harden, to open rather than close, to love rather than judge. This is the way of wisdom. This is the path to peace. This is the thread that never breaks.